So there's this question that's been clouding up in my head. What gives or what performs better? Is it going to be an old brake pads versus a new brake pads? If it's going to be installed on old rim, for example, this new SRAM brake pads will be installed in this almost or very thin rims that has no brake line anymore, and then compare it with the newer rim and installed with the brake pads that's been thinned over time. So through this ride that's about to commence in a minute from now, I'm going to answer that question. So to sum up, what I will be doing with this bicycle is that I will be installing the newer brake pads into an old rim, and then the new rim will be installed with an old brake pads. But before that, I'm going to install this bicycle phone holder, or a phone holder for my bicycle. I've been very preoccupied with the thought of testing my new brakes and rim over the old rim that I forgot to install this back home. So I'm left here beside the street with this very limited tool, and I'm still hoping that I'm going to install this properly with just using one hand, because my other left hand is holding the camera, the phone camera, during this time that I'm installing this, and also hoping that no extra parts or bolts will be thrown out while during the installation, because it would be harder if it's gonna be thrown out in the gutter beside the street, and it would be harder for me to find. And so now I'll be going to install this camera into this holder, and the very first impression is that this holder really has a limited movement. It can only go up and down, so it's just a very basic holder. So now I'm stuck with a very weird angle on where to place my camera on, because it's very wide, the phone, so it's just behind the handlebar. Now I'm stuck with this position, and for the remaining minutes throughout this video, I will be sliding on the camera like this. So this will be the view throughout the duration of the ride. As what is seen in the screen right now is this right lever that I'm pressing right now. I'm applying force into it, a little bit of pressure. So I'm testing it because this one is connected to the front rim brake. And the front rim brake, we installed it with a thin and old brake pads. But as we remember a while ago in the start of this video, that we installed a newer rim and the wheel. And just by a couple of kilometers of running, based from that initial braking and application of brake towards the front rim, which is new and installed with an older brake pads, it's still reliable. I can still feel the grip, and the braking power can still hold. It can still stop the bicycle whenever I need it. But in comparison to the older rim, which doesn't have any more braking lining, even though it is being installed with the newer brake pads, it's totally unreliable, especially when you need to stop your bike in an instant or immediately. You need to have the braking power whenever you're going downhill, or if there's an emergency that you really need to stop. The braking power is not there anymore, so it's unreliable. It's not advisable to use old rim. And whenever you'll be using those older rims with brake linings, make sure to check it if it's still intact or at least an 80 to 90% thicker with brake linings. And of course, ride at your own risk. And because you'll be using that older rim, then do check it out every and regularly, almost every ride, if there's no crack, no bend, no issues, because that's the main components that's been in contact with the road.
My shifter isn't shifting, or when it shifts to the lowest gear it will go back on its own, because the previous day I put a lot of grease into it, or curiously it's shifting back, and when I shifted it like this it will go back on its own like that, so there is no friction. So now maybe I'm thinking while pedaling that because of the grease that I put a lot in there.
So this issue right here is quite a major one for me and for this bicycle. So there's a separate video of this whole process of me taking off and re-greasing and explaining it what was the cause and what probably is the solution of this, and I took several solutions of this one until I ended up with the right one or the proper solution. So do check it out. Do check the video on a separate link that will be shown. The link will be shown somewhere in this screen right now.
I remember because I really soaked it with grease when I installed it. So now it is clean, but I think that the main problem here is that there is no bearing in this side right here, and
So in hindsight, this is just basically a problem of inexperience and caused by lack of research, and me having as a mechanic a lot of things to learn actually.
it's already bent a little. So let's test it.
And so from here on up to the end of the video, it's mostly more about the total experience of this ride, which is quite exciting. Things that I ate, places we've been with this bicycle, and just a little bit of a spoiler. This taho or soy drink, this vendor actually tricked me. It included tapioca pearl that is
Kaya sa uli sagu.
the usual ingredients of this drink.
Walay sagu. Kaya sa wagad. Ay, walay sagu. Back to ride. Back to the ride. Oh yeah.
So going back to the main topic of this bicycle, which is the comparison of a newer rim installed with an old brake pads and compared it with an older rim with a newer brake pads. So finally I can say that don't use the old rim without brake lining anymore, even though newer brake pads are installed, because it is totally unreliable, and if you value your precious life, then don't do it. Just change the whole thing. New brake pads, then you need to have a newer rim also. But there are cases that you can still use your old rim even though if it doesn't have the brake lining anymore. You can use it for fixed gear bicycle, wherein you won't be needing brakes for your to stop your bicycle, because of course you'll be stopping your bicycle with your foot.
So this is the newly constructed road here in Kumano, Napogon.
Ya. Oh. Beta ko. Kuan be.
Unsa man ba?
Ko lang may to pertuan mo daw unan.
Kanang kuan isda.
Wa mura to.
Kanang timbungan ba kanang bian? Nya. Ang nga nagtuho mo mix 50 kilo. Awas ka sa kilo.
Ano ko tunga na.
Break na ko ni paro.
Pero klaro po may was quit. Ya.
Agrige. Sukle.
Kaduhan na nga ginakop niya.
Kay ka na magud. Government address. Kay ka rin mo. Kain naman ako sutiin na isra. Tapak managod kay. Lunis.
Okay na.
Okay? Okay. Kuya Lelabes. Subscribe to Roman and Gabay. It's too hot.
Hindi ko piste. Swerte.